you're probably using the wrong music distributor without even knowing it. And the reason has nothing to do with the price or the hype or whatever your friend insists is the best option. Actually, most of us artists choose a distributor the same way that we choose a restaurant to go to after a gig. I mean, we find out what's open late and what's cheapest and maybe whatever the sound guy recommended to us, right? And that is exactly why so many indie artists end up frustrated and feeling stuck and just quietly wondering why releasing music feels so much harder than it should. I recently published some videos about choosing the best distributors. And, honestly, what I wasn't thinking about at the time was each of us as individual artists have individual needs. And that means that one distributor might not work for everybody. So what's right for me may not necessarily be right for you. But the truth is really simple. Your distributor should just match your workflow more than anything else, not your mood, not whatever your chat group consensus opinion is. Really, once you understand what kind of an artist that you are, then the right distributor becomes super obvious. So let me walk you through 10 archetypes that I've created. These aren't stereotypes. They're not jokes. They're actually real grounded artist types and people that I've met in studios and nightclubs and dive bars and even DM sessions for well over a decade. If you find yourself in one of these, then you're going to know exactly where your music belongs. And before I break these down, I want you to guess which type of archetype that you actually are, like you yourself. Don't overthink it. Just pick one, whatever feels closest to you, and keep that in your head. And by the end, you're going to know whether or not you were right. So my first archetype, I'm going to call a fast mover, right? Does this sound like you? You create, you finish, and you release music faster than most people can even update a playlist, You don't sit on songs. You don't overthink things. You don't wait for the perfect moment to happen. Really, your momentum is the moment, and you need a distributor that moves as quickly as you do. You need these things: fast delivery, minimal friction, and a system that doesn't slow you down, right? Now, I know this great musician. He's a friend of mine. His name is Slothguard. Shout out to you, Slothguard. He is a super fast mover. He releases music like on a weekly basis, sometimes even daily. It's mind-boggling to watch him in his creative process. And for somebody who's a fast mover like this, DistroKid is really built for this. Their automated system pushes releases through quickly, and their interface kind of just stays out of the way. And if you drop singles the way that other people send out postcards, this is totally your lane. Now, Amuse could be another good choice for you if you're a fast mover. Just throwing that as a second option. But what you should avoid is any platform that relies on like a slow manual review or unpredictable turnaround times. The one to avoid then for a fast mover is definitely CD Baby, because their manual review process slows you down and you don't wait. Your distributor shouldn't either. Here's a truth bomb for you. People think that fast movers are reckless, but the truth is you just simply refuse to let a good idea sit around long enough to get cold. When a fast mover uses a slow distributor, the momentum that you usually use as fuel can start to feel like, sitting behind a slow driver in the fast lane on the highway. The excitement that you rely on can turn into frustration. My second archetype then, I'm going to call the Perfectionist, right? You revise mixes until the sun comes up, and you treat artwork until the file name ends up something like final version 27.8.2. And, you're not slow, you're just precise. You need a distributor that values accuracy and stability. And you want predictable review processes and support that actually helps when you need it the most. When a perfectionist uses a speed-first distributor, every rushed detail kind of feels like a personal betrayal, and the release stops feeling like your work, right? People think perfectionists are slow, but really, you're the only one brave enough to admit that the version that you started with kind of belonged in the recycling bin. Now, do you see yourself in this? If so, okay, CD Baby could fit this mindset if only they had a better track record for support and pricing. But they do manually review every release, which takes longer, but it catches issues early on, which is helpful. Symphonic, though, is my choice for the perfectionist because they take accuracy seriously and they handle details really well. If you care more about correctness than speed, then the structure works in your favor every time. What you should avoid is any system that prioritizes speed over scrutiny. In that case, you should probably avoid DistroKid because their speed-first system is not built for meticulous oversight, You really want a second set of eyes rather than a conveyor belt. Okay, and my third archetype then, I'm going to call it the builder, right? As a builder, when you use a shallow platform, you feel like you're stacking bricks on a pile of sand, basically. And the long-term vision that usually grounds you, well, it can start to feel pointless. I mean, people think builders can be a little bit boring, but actually, you're quietly creating a future while everyone else is still debating their release date in the group chat. You aren't just releasing songs. Really, you're building a catalog, a brand, a long-term ecosystem, okay? And you think in years and not weeks. So is this a good fit for who you are? Well, if it is, then you need a distributor that has really strong publishing options and solid reporting and tools that grow with you. Now, my projects with my friend Jonathan Andrew Risden remind me of this quite a bit. Shout out to Jonathan, by the way. In the past few years, we built a catalog with literally hundreds of tracks, and we could use a partner that provides a higher level of support. Symphonic is actually a very strong fit for this. They're selective, but if you get in, then you get a partner that has real infrastructure. And, second choice, Stim could also be a good choice here because they offer long-term infrastructure and publishing support, and I'm going to say deeper reporting tools, which is really helpful. What you should avoid, though, is any platform that focuses on quick uploads but offers very little depth beyond distribution. So, if you're a builder, the one to avoid is probably Amuse because it focuses more on accessibility than long-term catalog development. So, my fourth archetype is the collaborator, right? Does this match your reality? Your group chats have more producers than a festival lineup, and you're constantly featuring and co-writing and cross-pollinating with other musicians and producers. And, well, what you need is a distributor that makes splits very simple and keeps accounting clean. DistroKid and Amuse both offer automated splits that keep friendships intact and money flowing where it should be. And what you should avoid, if you're a collaborator, is any system that forces you into manual payout gymnastics, right? So the one to avoid here is CD Baby, because splits require more manual work and they can slow down collaborative workflows with them. When a collaborator uses a distributor with messy splits, then the music could stay fun, but the friendships can get a little bit tense, and suddenly that creative joy has paperwork shadows all over it. And people think collaborators are chaotic, but you're basically a kind of person that's running a creative train station where every artist arrives late, and yet somehow the music still all gets made and published. Your creative world is chaotic enough and your splits really shouldn't be. All right. So my fifth archetype, I'm going to call it a visual storyteller. So maybe this is something that you can relate to. Your camera roll is like a storyboard and you think in scenes and colors and edits, right? Your music is part of a larger visual world and you need a distributor that has really strong social integrations and like good YouTube tools and fast updates to platforms that prioritize visuals, People think that visual storytellers are kind of dramatic, maybe, but you just simply know that a song without visuals feels kind of like a film with the lights left on, UnitedMasters leans heavily into visuals first ecosystems and social platforms, and that makes them a natural fit for artists who live in both sound and imagery. And what you should avoid is any distributor that treats video like an afterthought. And unfortunately, the truth is that is most of them. All right, so my sixth archetype, I'm going to call it the strategist. Oh my gosh, you love data, you love dashboards, maybe you're a nerd, okay, but you love understanding why something worked and why it didn't. And you're not guessing, you're optimizing, You need detailed analytics and clear reporting and tools that help you make informed decisions every time. And this is honestly my soul brother archetype because I could personally stare at data all day long, trying to figure out the story behind the numbers and what they tell. And people think that strategists overthink things, but you're really the only one that can explain a flop without blaming the planets for not aligning. And so for you, Symphonic and Stim both offer deeper analytics and more strategic tools than the average distributor. And what you should avoid is any platform that has super vague metrics or limited reporting. Amuse is the one to avoid here because its reporting is just super simplified and less detailed. My seventh archetype, I'm going to call a community builder, okay? You're not chasing virality. You're building a tribe. You care about relationships and authenticity and long-term connections with people. You need fan engagement tools, direct-to-fan options, and a very stable infrastructure. When a community builder uses an algorithm-first kind of a distributor, then the people they connect with feel very distant and the connections that you're working so hard to protect start kind of slipping through the cracks. So is this hitting a little bit too close to home? I mean, if it is, maybe you should consider Bandcamp. Bandcamp is technically not a distributor, all right, but it's really the best home for community-driven artists. And when you pair it with a reliable distributor like maybe Symphonic, you can get the best of both worlds. Now, people think that community builders are kind of too wholesome and, maybe they are, but really, you're quietly running a fan economy while everyone else is chasing a lucky moment. And what you should avoid then is any platform that prioritizes algorithmic reach instead of human connections. So the one to avoid is going to be UnitedMasters because it leans more toward algorithmic reach than community-driven engagement. So archetype number 8, I'm going to call it the experimentalist. Does this describe you? People think experimentalists are inconsistent but the truth is you're the source of half of the ideas that everyone else pretends that they invented. You're not following trends at all. You're really inventing them. And your releases might be unpredictable and genre bending or kind of unconventional, maybe unorthodox, right? But you need flexibility and strong metadata handling and support that understands non-standard type releases. CD Baby would be a great choice if, again, they just had a better pricing model and better customer support. And that is a big downfall. But don't worry, Symphonic actually is a great choice too, because they handle unusual metadata and non-traditional release types. And all these things are done more gracefully than like a speed-focused platform would do. What you should avoid is any system that assumes every artist fits the exact same mold. Okay, my 9th archetype is what I'm going to call the entrepreneur. People think entrepreneurs are too serious but really, you're simply the only one reading the fine print before the regret kicks in on your decisions. You run your music like a business and you think about revenue streams and rights ownership and long-term leverage. And in that case, you need strong rights management and publishing options and clear contracts and transparent terms. Does this feel familiar? And if it does, then think about Symphonic and STEM. They both offer business-minded tools and structures that support entrepreneurial artists like you. And what you should avoid is anything with vague terms or kind of unclear ownership structures. Amuse is not good for an entrepreneur, for example, because its structure is simple and it's less focused on long-term ownership strategy. Archetype number 10, I'm going to call it the wild card. It's a fun one. You're unpredictable, but in the best way, of course. And some months you might drop 3 singles, and then other months you disappear into a cabin in the woods to work on your first concept album. All right. Well, what you need is flexibility and stability. You need a system that's not going to punish inconsistency. And if you're a wild card and you use a pay-per-release platform, your spontaneity is going to turn into stress, and the freedom that you depend on starts to feel really expensive. DistroKid is probably going to work really well for artists who release in bursts because their unlimited model supports irregular output. What you should avoid is any output that charges per release. The one to avoid is CD Baby because paying per release becomes expensive and restrictive when your output swings wildly. People think the wild cards are unpredictable, but really, you're just following a creative rhythm that makes perfect sense to you and absolutely no sense to anyone else, but that's all right. Now let me add a twist, right? Maybe you're 80% strategist with a little bit of wildcard energy, or a builder who occasionally turns into a fast mover when inspiration hits you. Well, most of us fit into more than one archetype. So which one is the most like you as an artist? And do any of my recommendations kind of cross over to your hybrid situation? Let's say that you're a hybrid fast strategist. You move quickly, but not blindly, and you drop often, but every release has a specific purpose. You love momentum, but you also love dashboards. You're the rare creature that can release 3 singles in a month and still say exactly why the second one performed so much better. Fast movers chase output, and strategists chase insight. So the fast strategist hybrid chases both. For this person, Symphonic gives you deeper analytics that you crave while also still offering reliable turnaround times and a good pay model. It's not the fastest platform on earth, but it is fast enough for someone who wants both momentum as well as structure. I'm going to say DistroKid is a close second there too. If you lean more towards speed than analysis, DistroKid kind of keeps you moving without any friction. And what if you're a visual builder hybrid? Okay. Then you're an artist that thinks in worlds instead of singles. You care about visuals, you care about branding and long-term identity, and you want a catalog that feels kind of cinematic, like this colorful universe. And you're also patient and intentional and obsessed with cohesion. Visual storytellers think in imagery and builders think in legacy. So the visual builder is going to think in both ways. You want a distributor that supports both long-term growth and also plays well with visual-first platforms. Makes total sense. Symphonic supports long-term catalog development, and they offer strong infrastructure, and they actually handle the details that matter to someone building a world. And it also integrates well with platforms where visuals matter. Again, UnitedMasters is kind of a close second for me here, because if you lean more toward social-first visuals, then UnitedMasters can serve you really well. How about one last hybrid? I want to make sure that I got you covered here. So, are you a collaborative entrepreneur hybrid, right? If so, you're an artist that works with everyone, everywhere, all the time, and you love splits, you love features, co-writing, and shared projects, right? All these things. But you also think like a business owner. You care about rights, ownership, and like long-term leverage. So you want clean accounting and clean contracts. Collaborators want smooth splits, and entrepreneurs want strong rights management. The collaborative entrepreneur really wants both. So if this is you, then you need a distributor that keeps the money flowing, and not just flowing, but flowing correctly. And the paperwork has to be really clean. So STEM is actually built for artists who collaborate heavily, but also care about business structure. Their split system is really clean. Their accounting is totally transparent, and their rights management tools support long-term ownership. DistroKid, again, is kind of a second close runner-up. If you lean more towards speed and simplicity, well, DistroKid's automated splits keep the creative chaos very well organized. Here's the real point. Most artists argue about distributors the way that people argue about coffee shops, They're loud, they're confident, but they have no awareness that what they're actually talking about is just a personal preference instead of a universal truth. There is no best distributor. There's only the distributor that matches your creative rhythm as an artist. Once you know your own archetype or your hybrid, then the decision stops being emotional and it becomes way more obvious. You just learn more about distribution than most artists ever bother to understand. And if you're watching this with a bandmate or your producer in mind, tag them and send this to them too, because I guarantee that they fit into at least one of these archetypes perfectly. So here's the real question. Which archetype are you? Which one is your most chaotic collaborator also? And tell me in the comments, because I want to see how your team actually moves. And this has been fun, but there's actually other archetypes that I didn't include here because they really deserve their own video. So if you want more, tell me in the comments. I'm Kevin from Innovaniac Music. We help indie artists make amazing music and build their audience. Until the next video, dream big and create boldly.
100 miles per hour on that see-through. All I ever had is to be true. More like Swiss cheese when I approach these words. They got holes in them, so deep you can fill them up and swim in them. Not advisable, I would try it though. Walk with a cane on a rainy day. Big teeth out, that's a smiley face. Lights on, lights off, I'ma make it happen. Wax on, wax off.